All right, here we go. WNBA's officials exposed blatantly cheating for Asia Wilson. I mean, this is blatant cheating. Breanna Stewart pissed off about it after the game, and she was had to speak to the media. This is nasty. We got
two stories, two arenas, two completely different kinds of chaos, and both of them exploding at the exact same time. On one side of the country, a basketball player walked into the most hostile environment of her career, heard an entire arena try to swallow her whole, and responded by doing something so cold, so calculated, and so utterly disrespectful to everyone booing her that people are still talking about it days later. On the other side of the country, a superstar had already delivered one of the most dominant individual performances of the entire season, but none of that mattered because the officials had just handed down a decision so jaw-dropping, so impossible to defend, that one of the biggest names in the sport marched straight to a microphone and told the world exactly what she thought of it. And what she said? It has the entire league shaking right now. We are talking about a weekend inside the WNBA that felt less like professional basketball and more like a pressure cooker that finally lost its lid. Every element was in place: controversy, history, outrage, and performances so extraordinary they barely felt real. If you thought the league was starting to calm down after everything that had already gone down this season, this weekend was the universe's way of laughing directly in your face. We are going deep into all of it, and nothing is getting skipped, because every single piece of this story connects to something bigger, something that goes far beyond what happened inside those two arenas on that single Friday night. Let's start in Portland. Before a single player stepped onto the hardwood at the Moda Center in Portland, Oregon, the atmosphere surrounding this game was unlike anything the city had seen inside that building in a very long time. We are talking about a level of pre-game tension that had nothing to do with standings, playoff positioning, or even the matchup itself. This was something entirely different. This was personal, political, and deeply divided, and it had been building for weeks. It started earlier in July when ESPN Profile quoted Sophie Cunningham voicing her opposition to transgender women competing in women's sports. Her words were direct. She talked about wanting to protect girls in locker rooms, about believing in truth alongside love, about the biological distinctions she believes matter in athletic competition. She did not frame it as hatred. She consistently maintained that her position comes from a place of care, not hostility. She even took to social media afterward to make that crystal clear, writing that everyone, biological girls, biological boys, trans women, trans men, is welcome at her table, that you can disagree with someone and still be kind. But the controversy escalated significantly during a Fever Storm matchup in Seattle, where a small rally formed outside the arena in support of Cunningham's comments, while a Storm player wore a shirt during warm-ups with a message supporting trans rights. That Seattle situation then took a dramatic turn when Storm co-owner Celeste Keaton was suspended for 5 home games after allegedly cursing at 2 fans wearing shirts referencing chromosomes in support of Cunningham. The Storm organization apologized. The internet did not move on. If anything, that incident poured fuel on a fire that was already burning in every direction. So by the time the Indiana Fever rolled into Portland to face the Portland Fire, the city was already primed. About 24 Cunningham supporters, along with counter-protesters and onlookers, gathered outside Portland's Moda Center on Friday night, the second consecutive road stop where competing rallies had formed around Cunningham's public opposition to transgender participation in women's sports. People had signs, people had flags, people called other people names. Some brought tripods to record their own viewpoints. This was not just a basketball crowd showing up to watch a game. This was a divided country showing up to make a statement, and the arena itself was going to become the loudest stage of all. Inside the Moda Center, the atmosphere was charged before the opening tip. The Fire promoted trans and gay pride flags held by fans whenever they could, clearly showcasing where the building's sentiment leaned. The message from the crowd was unmistakable before anyone had even touched the ball. And then, 6 minutes and 26 seconds into the first quarter, Sophie Cunningham checked into the game.
And Kelsey Mitchell just kept shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting until she got that 20-point. We have to keep the streak alive. Oh boy. Caitlin Clark with her 4th career triple-double, 26 points, 10 assists, 10 rebounds. Kelsey Mitchell, 13 straight games with 20-plus points, tied with Diana Taurasi for the 2nd longest streak. She is now looking at A'ja Wilson. She has a good amount.
What happened next is the kind of moment that becomes a sports story long after the season ends. Fans booed Cunningham in repeated swells, especially when she entered the game, and all the way through her steal and breakaway layup just before halftime. The sound was massive, concentrated, relentless. An entire arena channeling its frustration, its politics, its passion, all of it, directly at one player. Most people would crumble. Most people would go somewhere inside themselves and just try to survive the game. That is the human response to being publicly targeted by thousands of voices all at once. It is overwhelming, it is suffocating, and it takes an extremely rare kind of personality to not just survive it, but to weaponize it. Sophie Cunningham is that kind of person. She responded by holding up an L gesture toward Fire fans in the stands after making a first-quarter three-pointer. Think about that for a second. She did not put her head down. She did not look to the bench for reassurance. She did not even pretend to ignore the noise. She buried the shot, turned to face the people who had been screaming at her, and she told them, with her hand, with her body language, with every ounce of energy she had, exactly what she thought of them trying to get in her head. It was savage, it was bold, and depending on where you stand on everything surrounding this situation, it was either one of the most inspirational moments of the season or one of the most infuriating. But here is what cannot be debated, regardless of your position on any of it. The woman competed. She did not shrink. She finished the game with 13 crucial points for the Indiana Fever and played her role on a team that was absolutely suffocating the Portland Fire from start to finish. The crowd had wanted to knock her off her game, and they failed completely. And while all of that drama was consuming the attention of everyone inside the Moda Center, a different kind of history was being made on the exact same floor. History that had nothing to do with politics, rallies, or social media wars. History that was purely, undeniably, about basketball. We need to talk about what Caitlin Clark is doing right now, because the sports world keeps running out of ways to describe it. The Indiana Fever came into Portland riding momentum, but what Clark delivered against the Fire was not just a good game in the context of a winning streak. It was a performance that immediately entered the conversation about the greatest individual outputs in the history of this league. The Fever dismantled Portland 112-98. That result gave Indiana their 5th consecutive victory and extended what is now the longest streak of 100-point games in WNBA history, their 13th this season. Clark finished with 26 points on 5 of 9 shooting, including 14 of 17 from the free throw line, along with 10 rebounds, 10 assists, 2 steals, and 4 turnovers. That stat line means one very specific thing: her 4th career triple-double. With that performance, Clark moved into a tie with New York Liberty star Breanna Stewart for 3rd most triple-doubles all-time in WNBA history. Only Alyssa Thomas with 20 and Jessica Shepard with 5 have more. Let that sink in for just a moment. She is in her 3rd season. She missed significant time in year 2 due to injury, and she is already being mentioned in the same breath as the greatest statistical performers this league has ever produced, not because of hype or media narrative or the spotlight that follows her everywhere she goes, but because of the actual numbers, the actual games, the actual moments where she has stepped up and delivered when it mattered most.
But the triple-double was not even the most staggering record she broke that night. With that performance, Clark became the fastest player in WNBA history to reach 1,500 points and 500 assists, achieving the milestone in just 78 career games. The previous record holder was Breanna Stewart, who accomplished it in her 97th game. Clark got there 19 games faster, nearly an entire season faster. That is not an incremental improvement on an existing record. That is a completely different timeline of excellence. That is a player operating at a pace that the sport simply has not seen before. And here is the thing that makes all of this even more extraordinary. She is doing it while also elevating everyone around her. The Indiana Fever are not just Caitlin Clark's team right now. They are a machine, and the machine is running at a level that nobody in this league has figured out how to shut down. Against Portland, Indiana poured in 27 points in the first quarter, 29 in the second, and then absolutely buried the Fire with 34 in the third quarter. The Fever have scored 100 or more points in each of their last 5 games, extending what is already the longest streak of 100-point games in WNBA history. That is not a hot shooting night. That is not a favorable schedule. That is a team that has figured out how to play basketball together at the highest level, and right now they are doing it better than anyone else in this league. Clark's 5-game stretch during the winning streak reads 26 points, 10 assists, 10 rebounds, 32 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds, 27 points, 11 assists, 2 rebounds, 17 points, 7 assists, 2 rebounds, and 45 points, 10 assists, 2 rebounds, over 5 games, against different opponents, under different circumstances, including a game with 45 points. The consistency, the volume, the variety of ways she can hurt you, it is relentless. But Clark is not doing it alone, and that's actually what makes this team so dangerous. Kelsey Mitchell has scored 20 or more points in 13 consecutive games, tying Diana Taurasi for the second longest such streak in WNBA history. Diana Taurasi, one of the most decorated and celebrated offensive players the sport has ever produced. Kelsey Mitchell is sitting right next to her name in the record book right now. And the only player with a longer streak? Reports suggest she is now in Mitchell's sights too. The Fever are hunting records from every direction, and their opponents are running out of answers. The win improved Indiana's record to 19-10 on the season, the best record in the Eastern Conference, and the 4th best overall in the WNBA. For a franchise that spent years struggling to find consistency, struggling to build around young talent, struggling to give their fan base a reason to believe again, what is happening in Indiana right now is extraordinary. It did not happen overnight. It did not happen by accident. It happened because of development, because of investment, because of one generational talent pulling the entire organization into a completely different stratosphere. And yet, as incredible as everything happening in Portland was, it was actually the other story from this weekend that has the entire league on fire right now. Because while the Fever were making history in the Pacific Northwest, something was happening in Las Vegas that no amount of great basketball can fix. Something that cuts to the very heart of a crisis that the WNBA has been struggling to address for 2 full seasons now.
The New York Liberty and the Las Vegas Aces do not play quiet games. They are 2 of the best teams in this league, 2 rosters built with championship ambitions, 2 fan bases that care deeply and watch closely. Every time these teams meet, the stakes feel elevated, the energy is different, and their 3rd matchup of the 2026 season was no exception. This game had everything. It had momentum swings, it had monster individual performances, it had the kind of back-and-forth tension that makes professional basketball so compelling to watch. For the first half of this game, the Liberty were doing an outstanding job containing A'ja Wilson, holding her to just 10 points in the first 2 quarters on difficult shooting. But the second half told an entirely different story. Wilson found another gear entirely, scoring 23 of her 33 points after halftime and adding 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 blocks before the night was over. She was simply too much, too powerful, too experienced, too comfortable operating in big moments under the biggest of lights. And yet, the Liberty fought back. That is the thing about this New York team. They do not fold. They grind, they compete, and they had a player of their own delivering at an elite level on the other end. Breanna Stewart passed Candace Parker for 10th place on the WNBA's all-time scoring leaderboard with her 26-point performance in Thursday's loss. She also hauled in 11 rebounds, recorded 3 steals, a block, and an assist. This was a Breanna Stewart operating at her absolute peak, doing everything a player can be asked to do in a hostile environment against the best team in the Western Conference. And the Liberty stayed right there with the Aces deep into the fourth quarter, which made what happened in the final seconds so much more devastating. The game came down to a single possession, and the referees did not get it right. With exactly 17.9 seconds remaining in the game, Las Vegas held a 3-point lead, 98-95. The Aces had been trying to close it out, but the Liberty were pressing, defending, refusing to let this slip away without a fight. A three-pointer would tie the game. One stop and one made basket. That was all New York needed to completely transform the final minute and set up one of the most dramatic possible endings of the entire WNBA season. A'ja Wilson got the ball on the right side and decided to attack. She put the ball on the floor and drove toward the baseline, running into Jonquel Jones playing hard defense. During that drive, Wilson lost control of the ball and it bounced out of bounds. Everyone in the building and watching at home believed the ball clearly went off Wilson last. The footage showed it. Wilson's own body language showed it. She immediately turned away from the play and began walking back toward half court, the universal body language of a player who knows she just turned the ball over and is already setting up defensively before the other team can push in transition. That single detail, Wilson walking back, would become the most discussed moment of the entire weekend. The officials called possession to Las Vegas, despite replay review appearing to show that Wilson had touched it last. The entire Liberty bench erupted. Coaches were on their feet. Players were pointing at the monitor, pointing at each other, pointing at the officials with expressions of total disbelief. But here is what turned a bad call into an absolute nightmare. New York had already used their challenge earlier in the game, so they could not force a review of the play. No challenge remaining, no recourse, no way to force anyone to look at the footage and make the right decision. The Aces kept the ball. The Liberty then had to intentionally foul on the subsequent possession, and Jackie Young nailed 2 free throws to ice the game. The final buzzer sounded. Las Vegas 104, New York 99. A fevered game that had 17.9 seconds left was suddenly over, and the Liberty walked off the floor knowing they had been given no real chance to tie it. The feeling in that building must have been suffocating. And then Breanna Stewart walked to the microphone.
There are post-game press conferences where players are diplomatic. There are press conferences where they are frustrated but measured. There are press conferences where they say just enough to make their point without creating a headline that overshadows everything else. And then there are moments like what Breanna Stewart delivered after this game. Moments where a player simply decides that the truth matters more than being careful. When reporters directly asked Stewart whether she believed the officials had gotten that final out-of-bounds call wrong, she did not pause. She did not hedge. She did not offer the standard "we're focused on the next game" non-answer that players are often coached into giving. She fired back with complete conviction. "Yeah, I did. So did A'ja." She was walking back to half court. That quote, those 2 sentences, they spread across the internet instantly, and they are still reverberating right now. Because what Stewart did in that moment was not just express her own frustration, she pointed directly at the opposing team's best player as the clearest possible evidence that the call was wrong. She was essentially saying, "Look, you don't have to take my word for it. Look at what A'ja Wilson herself did the moment that ball went out of bounds. She conceded the possession before the refs had even made the call. She turned around and walked because she knew, everyone in that building knew, and the officials still got it wrong. Even Wilson had immediately turned her back and started walking back to her side of the court, believing that it was the Liberty's possession. When you see your opponent acting like it is your ball before the ref has even pointed, that should tell you everything you need to know about who actually touched it last. The moment Wilson's feet started moving toward half-court, the possession should have been decided, and it was, just not in the direction the footage and the player's own instinct supported. The fallout from Stewart's comments was immediate. Social media absolutely erupted. Fans called the blown call at the end of the Liberty Aces game absolutely inexcusable and said the Liberty coach should have been ejected for reacting to it. People were pulling up the footage, slowing it down, frame by frame, sharing it everywhere. And what they were finding in that footage was not ambiguous. It was not a 50-50 play. It was not the kind of call where you can see the argument for both sides. It was a clear, documented, on-video error that directly affected the outcome of a high-stakes professional basketball game between two of the best teams in the league. And here is the part that makes it so much worse. This was not an isolated incident. This was not just a bad night for one officiating crew. This is part of a pattern that has been building inside this league for 2 full seasons, and the people in charge have been unable or unwilling to fully address it. Let's talk about what is actually happening with WNBA officiating right now, because the picture is not pretty. During last year's All-Star Weekend, WNBA Commissioner Engelbert publicly promised the league would fix its officiating problem. But nearly 2 months into the 2026 season, everything still appears to be a mess. The league formed a task force. They rolled out new educational guidelines for officials with a specific emphasis on freedom of movement. In May, leadership said they were pleased with the early results. Players and coaches clearly do not share that optimism. The examples of failures this season alone are staggering. The Chicago Sky were reportedly informed after a June 20 loss to Dallas that 3 critical calls during the game were all incorrect. 3 in one game, not borderline, not debatable, incorrect. And the result of those incorrect calls contributed to an outcome in a professional league game that cannot be reversed after the fact. The loss goes in the standings. The incorrect calls do not come with an asterisk. It gets worse. In another game, officials failed to notice that Kelsey Mitchell had fouled out and allowed play to continue before Indiana could substitute her. This is basic game management. Tracking foul counts is the most fundamental responsibility a referee has in a basketball game, and it was missed, completely missed. Analysts on the broadcast were stunned. WNBA legend Tamika Catchings said simply, "This should never happen," and she was right.
The biggest storyline of the WNBA season, according to analysts at Yahoo Sports, has not been the incredible play on the court. It has been officiating inconsistency that has repeatedly overshadowed everything else. Think about what that means in context. This league has Caitlin Clark breaking all-time records on a weekly basis. It has A'ja Wilson putting up numbers that have never been seen before in July. It has Breanna Stewart passing Candace Parker on the all-time scoring list. It has rivalries, storylines, star power, and genuine drama everywhere you look. And yet, the conversation keeps getting pulled back to the refs. The conversation keeps getting pulled back to missed calls and blown decisions, and a fundamental question about whether this league has the infrastructure to properly officiate the level of basketball being played on its floors. A reporter investigating the crisis found that the WNBA contracts out its officials through the NCAA with next to no transparency about the process or the standards being applied. No transparency. In a professional sports league with a rapidly growing profile, a massive new media deal, and more eyeballs on it than at any point in its history, the officiating structure is contracted out with almost no public accountability. Players have been calling for full-time, properly compensated referees for years. One coach told reporters directly, "Dangle a bigger carrot, pay them more money, go get better talent to come to the W." The argument is simple. If you want the best officials, you need to invest in them the way you invest in everything else that makes your product competitive. Right now, that investment does not appear to be happening at the level this league demands. And the person at the top? Her response to the growing outrage has not landed well with anyone paying close attention. Kathy Engelbert has been the WNBA commissioner since 2019. She has overseen genuine growth in this league, expanded media deals, rising attendance, increasing cultural relevance. Credit where it is due, the league is bigger than it has ever been, and she has been at the helm for most of that expansion. But her handling of the officiating crisis has drawn sharp criticism from fans, analysts, and players alike, and one quote in particular has become something of a lightning rod. When pressed about the wave of complaints coming from players and coaches about referee quality and consistency, Engelbert offered this response: "There's always room for growth and improvement in officiating. I do find it interesting when you sit in the chair I sit in that no winning team ever complains about officiating, no losing team ever doesn't complain about officiating." Read that again slowly. The commissioner of a professional sports league facing documented, video-confirmed, team-acknowledged examples of incorrect calls that altered game outcomes responded by essentially implying that the complaints are just losers making excuses. She wrapped it in diplomatic language, but the message was clear: stop whining and win more games. That was her answer to players publicly demanding accountability. That was her answer to coaches calling out specific plays where refs cost their teams possessions in critical moments. That was her answer to analysts, broadcasters, and independent journalists, all pointing at the same systemic problem. To her credit, Engelbert did eventually break her silence in a more substantive way at WNBA All-Star Weekend, saying the league hears the concerns, takes the input seriously, reviews every play, and has independent evaluations of officials with consequences in place. But words and results are two different things, and what happened at the end of the Liberty Aces game is the latest evidence that whatever is being done right now is not working at the speed or scale that this moment requires.
WNBA coach Stephanie White went off on officials after what she called 2 cheap shots on Caitlin Clark during a late June game, shots that caused Clark to exit in the second half with back issues. That incident had already reached Capitol Hill. The controversy over contact involving Clark and the Phoenix Mercury's Alyssa Thomas prompted congressional questions about player safety, an extraordinary development for what had started as a discussion about refereeing inconsistency. Congress asking questions about a basketball officiating controversy. If that does not tell you how far this issue has escalated beyond the courts and into the broader public consciousness, nothing will. The WNBA is at an inflection point, and this weekend, with everything that happened in Portland and Las Vegas simultaneously, crystallized exactly what that inflection point looks like. Here is what is so striking about everything that unfolded this past weekend, and why it feels like such a defining moment for this league and everyone in it. On one side of the country, you had pure, undeniable, historic greatness. You had Caitlin Clark recording her 4th career triple-double in her 78th game, breaking all-time records that players far more experienced than her had spent careers accumulating. You had Kelsey Mitchell tying a Diana Taurasi streak that people thought was untouchable. You had Sophie Cunningham walking into the loudest boos of her life and answering with a three-pointer and an L to the crowd. A moment that, regardless of how you feel about anything surrounding it, was genuinely extraordinary to witness as a sports fan. You had a team playing the most dominant, fluid, high-scoring basketball this league has seen in recent memory. On the other side of the country, you had a different kind of story entirely. You had 2 great teams competing at the highest level, putting on a legitimate show for 39 minutes and 42 seconds, and then having the final 17.9 seconds reduced to an argument about a call that nobody credible believes was correct. You had a superstar walk to a microphone and say in plain language that the officials robbed her team of a fair chance to win. You had video evidence that supported every word she said. And you had a broader pattern of failure that this one game fits into perfectly. A pattern that has been documented, discussed, criticized, and apparently not meaningfully addressed. The WNBA deserves better than this conversation. The players deserve better. The fans deserve better. The sport itself, which is genuinely captivating right now, which has genuine star power and genuine storylines and genuine moments of transcendent greatness, deserves to have those moments be the ones everyone is talking about the day after games. Not another blown call. Not another post-game press conference where a star is forced to choose between diplomacy and the truth. Not another weekend where the most searched phrase after a major WNBA matchup is some variation of "Did the refs cheat?" But that is where we are, and the question this weekend puts on the table is one that the league cannot keep pushing off into the future. Every major professional sports league goes through a moment where it has to decide what it actually is and what it wants to be. The WNBA is in the middle of that moment right now. The growth has been real. The attention has been real. The talent on the floor is undeniable, generational in some cases, and drawing in audiences that women's basketball has never previously reached. All of that is genuinely exciting and genuinely earned. But growth brings scrutiny, and scrutiny does not wait patiently for you to fix your problems before it finds them. The officiating crisis, the player safety questions, the lack of transparency around how referees are hired, evaluated, and held accountable. These are not fringe complaints from disgruntled fan bases. These are systemic questions about the integrity of the product, and they are being asked louder and more urgently with every passing week. What analysts and commentators keep coming back to is a simple, frustrating point. The league's officiating issues have become the #1 storyline, and instead, the focus should be on the extraordinary play happening on the court. That is the tragedy of this moment. There is so much to celebrate. There is so much that is genuinely special about what this league is producing right now, and it keeps getting buried under the weight of a problem that the people in charge have had 2 years of warnings to fix.
Sophie Cunningham walking into a wall of noise and refusing to flinch. Caitlin Clark dropping a triple-double and breaking records that legends spent decades building. A'ja Wilson delivering 33 points in a game that ended with a controversy nobody can defend. Breanna Stewart standing at a microphone and telling the world what she actually saw. Every single one of those moments is compelling. Every single one of those moments belongs in a highlight reel for a league that deserves to have its highlight reel be the thing people are sharing. Instead, we are having this conversation. Again. The talent is not the problem. The talent is extraordinary. The talent might be the best collection of basketball skills and competitive drive this league has ever had in a single season. The problem is the infrastructure surrounding that talent, the officiating, the accountability, the transparency, and the willingness of the people at the top to look at documented failures and treat them with the urgency they actually deserve, rather than deflecting with lines about how losers always blame the refs. This league is too good right now to keep having this problem define it. The players are too good. The games are too good. The stories, from the rallies outside arenas in Portland to the historic performances inside them, are too compelling to keep being overshadowed by the same conversation about the same unresolved crisis. Something has to change, and the question is whether it happens before the next blown call forces another superstar to walk to another microphone and say something that the whole world is going to be talking about for the next week. Because based on everything we have seen so far this season, that next microphone moment is not a question of if, it is a question of when. Down in the comments right now, do you believe the officiating in this league is broken beyond a quick fix, or is this a growing pain that the WNBA is going to work through as the money and attention continue to grow? And what do you make of Sophie Cunningham walking into that hostile arena and responding the way she did? Is that the toughest mental performance of the WNBA season so far? Let's hear it. Every take, every opinion, every reaction, drop it below, because this conversation is far from over.